Clarence Heatley and his crew were involved in 45 homicides. This man is not just evil, he's a remorseless monster. Described by police as a psychopathic killer, Clarence Preacher Heatley is one of the most brutal gangsters to ever emerge from New York. Known as Preacher, he ran his gang, the Preacher Crew, with a cult-like authority, reminiscent of a black version of Charles Manson. He was the undisputed leader, ordering murders as casually as one might order pizza, earning him another chilling nickname, the Black Hand of Death. The Preacher Crew's methods were terrifyingly systematic. They kidnapped rival drug dealers and brought them to a dungeon in a filthy basement where they tortured their victims. Their targets ranged from drug dealers to their family members. If you've seen the movie Paid in Full, it was the Preacher Crew who kidnapped Rich Porter's younger brother. They even allegedly kidnapped singer Bobby Brown. The crew held actual trials in their torture dungeon, deciding the fate of their victims with a thumbs up or thumbs down vote. After a victim was killed, a special group within the crew, known as the Janitors, cleaned up the mess. To be a janitor was a mark of prestige, requiring the member to have already killed someone. Most janitors had a distinctive tattoo of a mop and a bucket of blood. One particularly gruesome story, corroborated by multiple crew members, involves them killing someone, dismembering the head, and then kicking it around like a soccer ball on the roof of a building. The Preacher Crew's level of violence and the fear they instilled allowed them to dominate the streets of New York. Let's dive into the story of Clarence Preacher Heatley, a certified savage. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Born in Harlem in the early 1950s, Heatley's early life remains largely unknown. He spent much of his 20s in and out of jail for various crimes, from larceny to robbery. Heatley was physically imposing, standing at 6'7" and weighing over 260 pounds. If he wanted something, he took it by force. But brute strength wasn't his only weapon. Heatley was also highly charismatic, able to manipulate people with his words, which earned him the nickname Preacher. Preacher's reign of terror began in 1983 with the formation of the Preacher Crew. At its peak, the crew had 25 to 50 members, including Preacher's own son and daughter. Preacher was a dictator, imposing strict rules on his crew. Members were forbidden from using the drugs they sold, stealing from each other, or engaging in internal conflicts. Violating these rules or working with the police resulted in severe punishment or death. John Cuff, the second in command, was a rogue police officer turned gangster. From 1982 to 1986, he worked as a New York City Housing Authority police officer while actively participating in the Preacher Crew's crimes. Cuff protected the crew from law enforcement and took part in their criminal activities, including robbing rival drug dealers. The Preacher Crew was involved in a variety of criminal activities, from drug trafficking to extortion and contract killings. They were most notorious for their kidnappings. Their victims included rival drug dealers, family members, and anyone who could bring a ransom. Two kidnappings are particularly infamous: the alleged kidnapping of singer Bobby Brown and the kidnapping of Rich Porter's younger brother, Donnell Porter. The alleged kidnapping of Bobby Brown is a story that remains unconfirmed by Brown himself. According to the tale, in 1993, Brown owed $25,000 to a New Jersey cocaine dealer. The Preacher Crew saw an opportunity and assumed Brown's debt, then hunted him down, kidnapped him, and demanded $400,000. They allegedly made him sing and call his wife Whitney Houston for the ransom. Houston, disguised in a wig and glasses, paid the ransom and Brown was released. The kidnapping of Donnell Porter, depicted in Paid in Full, was even more horrific. On December 5, 1989, Donnell was kidnapped by the Preacher Crew, a plot orchestrated by his uncle, Johnny Apple Porter. Apple saw an opportunity to exploit his nephew's success and conspired with the Preacher Crew to demand a $500,000 ransom from Rich Porter. The kidnappers tortured Donnell, cutting off his finger and sending it along with a cassette tape of his pleas for help. Despite negotiations, the kidnappers stopped communicating, and Donnell's body was found wrapped in garbage bags on January 28, 1990. This brutal crime shocked New York City. The police and FBI formed the C-11 squad to tackle the escalating drug-related violence in New York. In April 1994, a member of the Preacher Crew reached out to authorities, fearing for his own life as the crew began eliminating its members. He revealed the crew's operations, including the killing of Malik, a psychopathic ex-military member of the crew. Malik was lured to a basement under the pretense of showing him a new gun. Once there, he was shot, dismembered, and his remains were discarded. This basement had been used as a torture dungeon where the crew held mock trials and decided the fates of their victims. The janitors, tasked with cleaning up the mess, were highly regarded within the crew. The C-11 squad's informant detailed the crew's heinous activities, leading to a 47-count RICO indictment in 1996. The charges included 11 murders, drug trafficking, and conspiracy. On February 6, 1999, Preacher pleaded guilty to 13 murders. Prosecutors sought the death penalty, but Preacher unexpectedly cooperated with the authorities, implicating his entire crew, including his own children. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 225 years. Clarence "Preacher" Heatley remains one of New York's most feared gangsters. His reign of terror blurred the lines between gangster and serial killer, instilling fear in everyone from rival drug dealers to the police. His story is a chilling reminder of the depths of human savagery. If you found this story engaging, please comment, like, and subscribe. More tales of certified savages are on the way. The evolution of the Preacher crew's criminal empire. The rise of Clarence Heatley and the Preacher crew was marked by a relentless pursuit of power, money, and fear. Their operations extended beyond simple street-level crimes, infiltrating various layers of society and exploiting weaknesses wherever they found them. The evolution of their criminal empire is a testament to Heatley's strategic mind and his crew's ruthless efficiency. The formation of the Preacher crew. In the early 1980s, the streets of New York were a battleground for drug dealers and gangs vying for control. Amidst this chaos, Clarence Heatley saw an opportunity. Using his imposing presence and charismatic influence, he began recruiting individuals who shared his ambition and lack of moral restraint. This group, which would become known as the Preacher crew, started small but quickly grew in numbers and notoriety. Heatley's ability to manipulate and control his followers was crucial in the formation of the crew. He offered protection, financial gain, and a sense of belonging to those who joined him. This combination of fear and loyalty created a tightly knit group willing to carry out his every command without question. Expanding operations, drug trafficking, and extortion. With a core group of loyal members, the Preacher crew expanded its operations into drug trafficking and extortion. They established connections with suppliers and distributors, ensuring a steady flow of narcotics into the streets of Harlem and the Bronx. This lucrative trade provided the financial backbone for the crew's other activities. Extortion became another significant revenue stream for the Preacher crew. They targeted drug dealers and business owners, demanding monthly taxes in exchange for protection. Those who refused to pay were subjected to brutal beatings, kidnappings, or even murder. The crew's reputation for violence ensured compliance, allowing them to extract thousands of dollars each month from their victims. Contract killings and kidnappings, the Preacher crew's signature crimes. While drug trafficking and extortion provided substantial income, it was the Preacher crew's involvement in contract killings and kidnappings that set them apart from other gangs. They were notorious for their willingness to carry out assassinations for hire, often targeting rival drug dealers and other gang members. These contract killings further solidified their reputation as a deadly force in New York's criminal underworld. Kidnappings became the crew's signature crime, instilling terror in the hearts of their victims and their families. The Preacher crew's kidnapping operations were meticulously planned and executed with military precision. Victims were often lured into traps or snatched off the streets, then taken to the infamous torture dungeon where their fate would be decided. The psychological warfare of the Preacher crew. The Preacher crew's success was not solely based on their physical brutality but also on their use of psychological warfare. Heatley understood the power of fear and used it to his advantage. The crew's reputation for sadistic violence spread quickly, creating an atmosphere of dread that kept potential rivals and victims in check. The torture dungeon was a critical element of this psychological warfare. The crew would bring their victims to this grim basement where they would be subjected to horrific torture. The purpose was not only to extract information or ransom, but also to send a clear message to others crossing the Preacher crew would result in unimaginable suffering. The downfall of the Preacher crew. Despite their fearsome reputation, the Preacher crew's downfall was inevitable. The sheer brutality of their crimes attracted the attention of law enforcement at all levels. The formation of the C-11 squad, a joint task force of the NYPD and FBI, marked the beginning of the end for Heatley and his gang. The turning point came when one of the crew members, fearing for his life as the crew started eliminating its own members, decided to cooperate with the authorities. His detailed account of the crew's operations provided crucial evidence that led to the RICO indictment in 1996. This indictment included charges of murder, drug trafficking, extortion, and conspiracy, effectively dismantling the preacher crew's criminal empire. Clarence Heatley's legacy. Clarence Preacher Heatley's legacy is one of terror and brutality. His ability to command and manipulate his followers, coupled with his willingness to use extreme violence, made him one of the most feared gangsters in New York's history. The Preacher crew's reign of terror serves as a stark reminder of the potential for savagery that lies within human nature. Yet, Heatley's story also highlights the resilience of law enforcement in the face of such evil. The combined efforts of the NYPD and FBI ultimately brought him and his crew to justice, ensuring that their reign of terror would come to an end. Today, Heatley serves a life sentence, a shadow of the tyrant he once was, but his story continues to haunt the memories of those who lived through the dark days of the Preacher crew's rule. The socioeconomic impact of the Preacher crew. The activities of the Preacher crew had far-reaching effects on the communities they terrorized. Their dominance over the drug trade and extortion racket disrupted local economies and instilled a pervasive sense of fear among residents. The socioeconomic impact of their criminal enterprise is a critical aspect of understanding the full scope of their influence, disrupting the local economy. The Preacher crew's control over the drug trade in Harlem and the Bronx had devastating consequences for these communities. The influx of narcotics not only fueled addiction, but also led to an increase in crime rates, as addicts resorted to theft and violence to support their habits. The crew's extortion racket further drained resources from local businesses, many of which operated on thin margins and could ill afford the protection fees demanded by Heatley and his gang. Small business owners lived in constant fear of retribution, knowing that any resistance could result in violent retaliation. This atmosphere stifled economic growth and discouraged investment, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and crime. The Preacher crew's stranglehold on the local economy was a key factor in the socio-economic decline of these neighborhoods during the 1980s and 1990s and 1990s. The human cost, fear, and trauma. The human cost of the Preacher crew's reign of terror cannot be overstated. The fear instilled by their brutal tactics left deep psychological scars on the communities they controlled. Residents lived in constant fear of violence, knowing that the crew's reach extended far beyond the drug trade. The threat of kidnapping, torture, and murder hung over their heads, creating an environment of pervasive anxiety and mistrust. Families of victims, such as the Porters, were forever changed by the crew's actions. The kidnapping and murder of Donnell Porter, orchestrated by his own uncle, is a stark example of the crew's ruthlessness and devastating impact on the victims' loved ones. The trauma experienced by these families reverberated through the community, leaving lasting scars that would take years to heal. The cultural impact from infamy to cautionary tale. The infamy of the Preacher crew transcended the boundaries of their criminal enterprise, becoming a part of New York's cultural history. Their story has been depicted in films, documentaries, and books, serving as a grim reminder of the violence that once plagued the city. Movies like Paid in Full dramatized the era's drug wars and the terror inflicted by gangs like the Preacher crew, keeping their legacy alive in the public consciousness. While these portrayals can sometimes glamorize the lifestyle of gangsters, they also serve as cautionary tales. They highlight the destructive consequences of a life of crime, both for the individuals involved and for the communities they impact. The story of the Preacher crew is a powerful example of how unchecked violence and criminality can devastate entire neighborhoods and leave a lasting legacy of fear and suffering. Lessons learned: law enforcement's response to organized crime. The rise and fall of the Preacher crew offers valuable lessons for law enforcement in combating organized crime. The successful dismantling of the crew through the combined efforts of the NYPD and FBI underscores the importance of coordinated action and intelligence sharing among agencies. It also highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to addressing the root causes of crime, including poverty, addiction, and social disintegration. The role of community engagement. One of the key takeaways from the Preacher crew's era is the importance of community engagement in combating organized crime. Law enforcement agencies must build trust and cooperation with local communities to effectively address criminal enterprises. This involves not only policing but also investing in social programs that address the underlying issues contributing to crime, such as education, employment opportunities, and addiction treatment. Community policing initiatives, where officers work closely with residents to identify and address local concerns, can help bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities they serve. By fostering a sense of partnership and shared responsibility, these initiatives can create an environment where residents feel empowered to stand up against criminal elements and support law enforcement efforts. The need for comprehensive strategies. The Preacher Crew's extensive criminal operations demonstrate the need for comprehensive strategies that address all aspects of organized crime. This includes not only targeting the leaders and key members, but also dismantling the financial and logistical networks that support their activities. Asset forfeiture, financial investigations, and the use of informants are critical tools in disrupting criminal organizations and preventing their resurgence. Additionally, law enforcement must focus on prevention and intervention strategies to deter individuals from joining gangs in the first place. This involves providing alternatives to at-risk youth, such as education, job training, and mentorship programs. By addressing the root causes of gang involvement, society can reduce the pool of potential recruits for criminal organizations. The importance of legal frameworks. The use of legal frameworks such as the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations RICO Act was instrumental in bringing down the Preacher Crew. RICO allows for the prosecution of individuals involved in organized crime by targeting the broader criminal enterprise rather than just individual acts. This approach enables law enforcement to take down entire organizations and disrupt their operations more effectively. The success of the RICO indictment against the Preacher Crew highlights the importance of robust legal tools in combating organized crime. Lawmakers and law enforcement agencies must continue to develop and refine these tools to keep pace with the evolving tactics of criminal organizations. This includes addressing new challenges such as cybercrime and transnational criminal networks. The continuing battle against organized crime. While the story of the Preacher Crew is a chapter from the past, the battle against organized crime continues. New gangs and criminal organizations have emerged, adapting to changing circumstances and finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. The lessons learned from the Preacher Crew's era remain relevant today, providing a blueprint for law enforcement and communities to work together in combating the ever-present threat of organized crime. The resilience of criminal networks. Organized crime networks are inherently resilient, capable of adapting to law enforcement efforts and finding new avenues for profit. The dismantling of one organization often leads to the rise of another, as the demand for illicit goods and services persists. This ongoing cycle requires a sustained and adaptive response from law enforcement agencies. To effectively combat organized crime, law enforcement must stay ahead of emerging trends and tactics. This involves investing in intelligence gathering, technological capabilities, and in international cooperation. The globalization of crime means that no single agency or country can tackle the problem alone. A coordinated global effort is essential. The role of public awareness. Public awareness and education play a crucial role in the fight against organized crime. By informing communities about the tactics and dangers of criminal organizations, law enforcement can empower residents to take preventative measures and support anti-crime initiatives. Media coverage, educational campaigns, and community outreach programs are vital components of this effort. Moreover, public awareness can help shift societal attitudes towards crime and violence. By promoting a culture of lawfulness and community solidarity, society can reduce the allure of gang life and create an environment where criminal activities are less likely to thrive. The future of law enforcement. The future of law enforcement in combating organized crime will be shaped by technological advancements and evolving criminal tactics. Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data analytics, and blockchain can provide new tools for detecting and disrupting criminal activities. However, these same technologies can also be exploited by criminals, necessitating ongoing innovation and adaptation by law enforcement. Training and professional development for law enforcement officers will be critical in preparing them for the challenges ahead. This includes not only technical skills but also cultural competency, community engagement, and ethical policing. Building a diverse and well-trained law enforcement workforce is essential for maintaining public trust and effectively addressing the complex landscape of organized crime. The legacy of the Preacher Crew. The story of Clarence "Preacher" Heatley and the Preacher Crew is a grim chapter in the history of New York's criminal underworld. Their reign of terror, marked by brutal violence and ruthless ambition, left an indelible mark on the communities they controlled. Yet, their eventual downfall serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience of law enforcement and the enduring spirit of justice. As society continues to grapple with the challenges of organized crime, the lessons learned from the Preacher Crew's era remain relevant. Through coordinated action, community engagement, and a commitment to justice, law enforcement and communities can work together to combat the ever-present threat of criminal organizations. The legacy of the Preacher Crew is a cautionary tale, but it is also a testament to the power of collective action in the face of evil. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more videos.